experiences and may vary from person to person. Key points about subjectively measurable factors. 1. Personal interpretation. These factors are influenced by individual perspectives, making them more variable and less consistent than objectively measurable factors. 2. Examples. Examples include self-reported happiness, stress levels, or satisfaction with life, which rely on personal interpretation and feelings. 3. Assessment methods. Subjectively measurable factors are often assessed through surveys, questionnaires, or interviews where individuals provide their personal evaluations. 4. Importance in research. While they may lack the objectivity of measurable factors, subjectively measurable factors are valuable for understanding personal experiences and social phenomena. In summary, non-observable factors cannot be directly seen or measured. Measurable factors can be quantified. Non-measurable factors cannot be easily quantified. Objectively measurable factors provide consistent data through standardized methods, and subjectively measurable factors rely on personal opinions and feelings. Understanding these concepts helps in analyzing various influences on behavior and experiences. Empirical factors. Empirical factors refer to elements that are based on observation or experience rather than theory or speculation. These factors are derived from real-world data and evidence gathered through experiments, studies, or direct experiences. Key points about empirical factors. 1. Observation-based. Empirical factors rely on what can be observed or measured in the real world. For example, conducting a survey to understand people's preferences is an empirical approach. 2. Data-driven. These factors are supported by data collected through research or experimentation, making them grounded in reality. 3. Real-world application. Empirical findings help inform decisions and theories based on actual evidence, rather than assumptions or predictions. 4. Examples. An example of an empirical factor is the effectiveness of a new medication determined by clinical trials that measure patient outcomes. Theoretical factors. Theoretical factors refer to concepts or ideas that are based on theories or models rather than direct observation. These factors are often used to explain phenomena or predict outcomes based on established principles. Key points about theoretical factors. 1. Conceptual framework. Theoretical factors provide a framework for understanding complex issues. They help researchers develop hypotheses and models based on existing knowledge. 2. Not directly observed. Unlike empirical factors, theoretical factors are not always backed by direct evidence. They are often based on logical reasoning and established theories. 3. Examples. An example of a theoretical factor is the theory of evolution, which explains biological diversity through concepts like natural selection. 4. Role in research. Theoretical factors are important in guiding research and shaping new inquiries, helping to build a deeper understanding of various fields. Practical factors. Practical factors refer to elements that are concerned with the practical application of theories or ideas in real-world situations. These factors focus on what can be done or implemented effectively in practice. Key points about practical factors. 1. Real-world application. Practical factors emphasize the usefulness and feasibility of concepts in everyday situations, such as implementing a new teaching method in a classroom. 2. Problem solving. These factors often address challenges and solutions in real-life contexts, making them relevant for decision-making and action. 3. Examples. An example of a practical factor is the availability of resources, such as time, money, or equipment, that can affect the implementation of a project. 4. Importance in execution. Understanding practical factors is crucial for successfully applying theories and concepts in real-world scenarios. Applied factors. Applied factors refer to the practical use of theories and concepts in specific situations or contexts. These factors involve taking theoretical knowledge and applying it to solve real-world problems. Key points about applied factors. 1. Implementation of knowledge. Applied factors focus on how theoretical ideas can be put into practice to achieve specific goals or outcomes. 2. Examples. An example of applied factors is using psychological theories to develop effective therapy techniques for treating mental health issues. 3. Hands-on approach. These factors emphasize a hands-on approach to using knowledge in various fields, such as medicine, education, and engineering. 4. Outcome-oriented. The goal of applied factors is to achieve tangible results and improvements based on theoretical understanding. Fundamental factors. Fundamental factors are the basic, underlying elements that serve as the foundation for understanding a concept or system. These factors are essential for grasping the core principles that govern more complex ideas. Key points about fundamental factors. 1. Core principles. Fundamental factors represent the essential truths or concepts that provide a basis for further exploration and understanding. 2. Examples. Examples include foundational mathematical principles like addition and subtraction, which are necessary for more advanced calculations. 3. Building blocks. These factors serve as the building blocks for more complex ideas and theories, helping to create a solid understanding of a subject. 4. Significance in learning. Understanding fundamental factors is crucial for mastering any subject, as they provide the groundwork for more advanced knowledge and applications. In summary, empirical factors are based on observation and real-world evidence. Theoretical factors are based on ideas and models. Practical factors focus on real-world applications. Applied factors involve using theories to solve specific problems. And fundamental factors are the core principles that form the basis of understanding. Understanding these concepts helps in analyzing and applying knowledge effectively across various fields. Derived factors. Derived factors are elements that result from or are influenced by other factors. They are not original or independent, but emerge as a consequence of changes or interactions among other variables. Key points about derived factors. 1. Result of other factors. These factors depend on the presence or changes of other factors. For example, a student's academic performance may depend on study habits and classroom participation. 2. Examples. An example of a derived factor is income level, which can be influenced by education, job skills, and experience. 3. Importance in analysis. Understanding derived factors helps in analyzing how changes in one area can impact another, providing insight into complex relationships. 4. Interconnectedness. Derived factors highlight the interconnectedness of various influences within a system or context. Essential factors. Essential factors are the key elements that are absolutely necessary for a particular outcome or process to occur. These factors are fundamental and cannot be omitted without compromising the overall effectiveness or existence of the system. Key points about essential factors. 1. Core requirements. Essential factors are vital for achieving a specific goal or maintaining a system. For example, water is an essential factor for plant growth. 2. Examples. In a successful business, essential factors might include a solid business plan, sufficient funding, and effective management. 3. Critical for success. Recognizing essential factors is crucial for understanding what needs to be in place for success in any endeavor. 4. Foundation of processes. These factors form the foundation upon which other elements may build or depend. Contingent factors. Contingent factors are elements that depend on certain conditions or circumstances to exist or occur. These factors can change based on specific situations or events. Key points about contingent factors. 1. Conditionally dependent. Contingent factors are not guaranteed to happen. They only become relevant if specific conditions are met. For example, a bonus at work may be a contingent factor based on meeting performance goals. 2. Examples. An example of a contingent factor is a project success that may depend on receiving adequate funding or resources. 3. Variability. These factors can vary widely based on different contexts or situations, making them unpredictable. 4. Importance in planning. Understanding contingent factors is essential when planning for future events, as they highlight the need to prepare for different outcomes based on varying conditions. Necessary factors. Necessary factors are elements that must be present for a certain outcome to occur. Without these factors, the desired result cannot be achieved, although their presence alone may not guarantee success. Key points about necessary factors. 1. Required for success. Necessary factors are vital to achieving a specific outcome. For example, having a valid driver's license is necessary for legally driving a car. 2. Examples. An example of a necessary factor in education is having qualified teachers to ensure effective learning. 3. Distinction from sufficient factors. While necessary factors are essential for achieving a result, they may not be sufficient on their own to guarantee success. 4. Role in understanding outcomes. Identifying necessary factors helps clarify what must be in place for success in various contexts. Sufficient factors. Sufficient factors are elements that, when present, guarantee a specific outcome or result. These factors alone can lead to the desired effect without needing any additional influences. Key points about sufficient factors. 1. Guarantee of outcome. If a sufficient factor is present, the outcome is assured. For example, passing all required exams is a sufficient factor for graduating from high school. 2. Examples. An example of a sufficient factor in a cooking recipe could be adding the right ingredients in the correct amounts to ensure the dish turns out well. 3. Independence. Sufficient factors often operate independently, meaning their presence alone is enough to achieve the desired result. 4. Importance in decision-making. Understanding sufficient factors helps in determining what actions or conditions will lead to successful outcomes. Conditional factors. Conditional factors are elements that depend on specific conditions or requirements to be met. Similar to contingent factors, they're influenced by particular circumstances, but they may also indicate what needs to happen for something else to occur. Key points about conditional factors. 1. Dependence on conditions. Conditional factors require certain prerequisites to be met before they can take effect. For example, a job offer might be conditional on passing a background check. 2. Examples. An example of a conditional factor is a scholarship that is awarded based on maintaining a certain GPA. 3. Variability and context. These factors can change based on varying circumstances, making them important to consider in planning and decision-making. 4. Role in processes. Recognizing conditional factors helps in understanding the conditions necessary for achieving specific results or actions. In summary, derived factors result from other influences. Essential factors are crucial for an outcome. Contingent factors depend on specific conditions. Necessary factors must be present for success. Sufficient factors guarantee an outcome, and conditional factors rely on certain requirements being met. Understanding these concepts helps in analyzing various influences on situations and outcomes. Certainly, here's a simple breakdown of each of these factors. Unconditional factors. These are elements that do not depend on any conditions or circumstances. They are always true or applicable no matter what. For example, the fact that all humans need water to survive is an unconditional factor. Absolute factors. Absolute factors refer to aspects that are fixed and cannot be changed. They are definite and certain. An example would be laws of physics, like gravity, which applies everywhere in the universe without exception. Relative factors. Relative factors depend on other conditions or contexts. They can change based on the situation. For instance, the value of money is a relative factor. It can differ based on the economy or location. Universal factors. Universal factors are elements that apply to all situations or are common across various contexts. For example, the need for communication is a universal factor among all human societies. Particular factors. Particular factors are specific to a certain situation or context. They do not apply universally. For example, a specific law in one country is a particular factor that may not exist in another. General factors. General factors are broad and can apply to many situations, but not all. They're common themes or ideas. For example, social interaction is a general factor affecting many aspects of human life. These definitions should help you understand the different types of factors and how they relate to various contexts. Specific factors. Specific factors are particular elements that relate directly to a certain situation or issue. They are not general and are often unique to a specific context. For example, if you're studying for a test, your specific factors might include your study materials or the specific topics covered on the exam. Primary factors. Primary factors are the most important elements that have a major impact on an outcome. They are the key reasons why something happens. For instance, if you're looking at what affects your grades, your study habits will be a primary factor. Secondary factors. Secondary factors are less important than primary factors, but can still influence an outcome. They provide additional context or support, but are not the main reasons. For example, a supportive study environment could be a secondary factor affecting your grades. Intrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors are elements that come from within a person or system. They are internal and often relate to personal traits or qualities. For example, your motivation to succeed in school is an intrinsic factor that can affect your performance. Extrinsic factors. Extrinsic factors are elements that come from outside a person or system. They are external influences that can affect outcomes. For example, the availability of resources like tutoring or parental support are extrinsic factors that can help you do better in school. Endogenous factors. Endogenous factors are those that originate from within a system or process. They are internal influences that affect outcomes. For example, in a business, the company's culture or internal policies are endogenous factors that shape its success. Exogenous factors. Exogenous factors are influences that come from outside a system or process. They affect outcomes, but are not controlled by the system itself. For instance, economic conditions or government policies are exogenous factors that can impact a business. These definitions should provide a clear understanding of each type of factor and how they relate to different contexts. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Internal factors. Internal factors are elements that exist within a person or organization. They influence behavior or outcomes based on internal characteristics. For example, a student's motivation, skills, and beliefs are internal factors that can affect their academic performance. External factors. External factors are influences that come from outside a person or organization. They can impact behavior, decisions, or outcomes. For instance, family support, school environment, or societal expectations are external factors that can affect a student's success. Constitutional factors. Constitutional factors relate to the fundamental laws or principles that govern a system, organization, or society. In a broader sense, they can refer to the basic structure of a person's personality or abilities, shaped by both genetics and environment. For example, a country's constitution sets the rules for how it operates. Acquired factors. Acquired factors are traits or characteristics that a person gains through experience or learning. They are not innate, but developed over time. For example, skills like playing a musical instrument or speaking a foreign language are acquired factors that come from practice and education. Innate factors. Innate factors are traits or characteristics that a person is born with. They are natural and not influenced by external experiences. For instance, a person's height or certain personality traits can be considered innate factors. Learned factors. Learned factors are behaviors or knowledge that a person develops through education or experiences. These are not instinctive and require effort to acquire. For example, critical thinking skills or social etiquette are learned factors that come from education and social interactions. Developed factors. Developed factors refer to traits or abilities that have been cultivated over time, often through practice or training. They may involve both innate and learned aspects. For example, a person may develop leadership skills through experience and training in various situations. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Latent factors. Latent factors are hidden or not immediately visible. They exist beneath the surface and may influence outcomes without being directly observed. For example, a student may have a natural talent for math that is not apparent until they start taking advanced math classes. Manifest factors. Manifest factors are clear, visible, and easily observable elements that directly affect outcomes. They can be measured or seen without much interpretation. For instance, a student's grades and attendance are manifest factors that show their performance in school. Active factors. Active factors are elements that actively influence or cause a change in a situation. They are dynamic and can drive outcomes or behaviors. For example, a teacher's teaching style can be an active factor that affects how well students learn. Passive factors. Passive factors are elements that do not actively influence or change a situation, but can still have an impact. They are more about the background conditions that allow things to happen. For instance, a school's resources like textbooks and technology can be passive factors that support learning without directly causing it. Efficient factors. Efficient factors are those that effectively contribute to achieving a desired outcome. They are productive and help to maximize results with the least amount of effort or resources. For example, using effective study techniques is an efficient factor that can help students learn better. Final factors. Final factors are the ultimate causes or reasons for a particular outcome. They represent the end result of all contributing factors and explain why something happens. For instance, passing an exam could be a final factor resulting from a combination of studying, understanding the material, and test-taking skills. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Formal factors. Formal factors are the established rules, structures, or frameworks that govern a system or process. They provide the guidelines for how things should operate. For example, in a school, formal factors include the curriculum, policies, and regulations that guide teaching and learning. Material factors. Material factors refer to the physical resources or materials that are necessary for a process or activity. They can include tools, equipment, and other tangible items. For example, in a science class, the laboratory equipment and supplies used for experiments are material factors that influence learning. Causal factors. Causal factors are the elements that directly cause an event or outcome. They establish a cause and effect relationship. For instance, consistent studying is a causal factor that can lead to better grades on exams. Correlational factors. Correlational factors are elements that show a relationship or connection with another factor, but one does not necessarily cause the other. For example, there may be a correlation between the amount of time spent studying and higher grades, but other factors could also influence this relationship. Predictive factors. Predictive factors are elements that can be used to forecast or predict future outcomes based on current data or trends. For example, a student's past performance in school can be a predictive factor for their future academic success. Explanatory factors. Explanatory factors are those that help clarify or explain why something happens. They provide insight into the reasons behind an outcome. For instance, understanding a student's motivation and study habits can be explanatory factors for their academic performance. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Descriptive factors. Descriptive factors are elements that provide information about a situation or phenomenon. They describe what is happening without making judgments or suggestions. For example, statistics about student attendance in a school are descriptive factors that show how many students are present without saying whether it is good or bad. Normative factors. Normative factors are standards or guidelines that define what is considered normal or acceptable behavior in a given context. They indicate how things should be. For instance, academic integrity policies in a school are normative factors that outline the expected ethical behavior for students. Prescriptive factors. Prescriptive factors are recommendations or guidelines that suggest how things should be done to achieve a desired outcome. They provide instructions for action. For example, study schedules or strategies for exam preparation are prescriptive factors that guide students on how to succeed academically. Evaluative factors. Evaluative factors are criteria used to assess or judge the quality or effectiveness of something. They help determine whether a situation or outcome meets certain standards. For example, grading rubrics used to evaluate student assignments are evaluative factors that assess the quality of their work. Critical factors. Critical factors are the most important elements that can significantly influence an outcome or decision. They are essential for success and must be considered carefully. For instance, time management skills can be a critical factor for a student's success in balancing studies and extracurricular activities. Analytical factors. Analytical factors involve breaking down a situation or problem into smaller parts to understand it better. They focus on examining details and relationships. For example, Analyzing test results to identify strengths and weaknesses in a student's performance involves using analytical factors to improve future learning. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Synthetic factors. Synthetic factors are elements that combine different parts or ideas to create a new whole. They involve integrating various aspects to form a complete understanding or solution. For example, in a research project, using data from different studies to draw a comprehensive conclusion is an example of synthetic factors at work. Dialectical factors. Dialectical factors focus on the interaction and conflict between opposing ideas or forces. They emphasize that change and understanding come from resolving contradictions. For instance, in discussions about social issues, exploring different viewpoints and finding a middle ground reflects dialectical factors. Phenomenological factors. Phenomenological factors are concerned with individual experiences and perceptions. They focus on understanding how people perceive and make sense of their world. For example, studying how students feel about their learning environment involves examining phenomenological factors to understand their experiences. Existentialist factors. Existentialist factors relate to the individual's search for meaning and purpose in life. They emphasize personal choice and responsibility. For instance, a student deciding on their career path based on their passions and values reflects existentialist factors in action. Humanistic factors. Humanistic factors focus on the importance of individual growth and self-actualization. They emphasize understanding people's needs and feelings to promote personal development. For example, supportive teaching methods that encourage creativity and self-expression in students are based on humanistic factors. Transactional factors. Transactional factors involve the interactions and exchanges between individuals or groups. They emphasize the importance of relationships and communication in shaping experiences. For example, the collaboration between students in group projects highlights transactional factors that influence learning outcomes. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Systemic factors. Systemic factors are elements that relate to the overall system or structure in which something operates. They consider how different parts of a system interact and affect one another. For example, in a school, systemic factors include the relationships between teachers, students, and administration, and how these relationships impact the learning environment. Cybernetic factors. Cybernetic factors focus on the control and communication within systems, often involving feedback loops. They examine how information is processed and how systems self-regulate. For example, in a classroom, feedback from students about teaching methods can help teachers adjust their strategies, reflecting cybernetic factors at work. Informatic factors. Informatic factors pertain to the management and use of information within a system. They involve how data is collected, processed, and communicated. For instance, the way a school tracks student performance and uses that data to improve teaching practices highlights informatic factors. Engineering factors. Engineering factors relate to the design and construction of systems or processes. They involve applying scientific principles to create effective solutions. For example, the design of a school's facilities to enhance learning experiences is an example of engineering factors impacting education. Mathematical factors. Mathematical factors involve the use of mathematical principles and techniques to solve problems or analyze situations. They can help quantify relationships and outcomes. For instance, using statistics to evaluate student performance data involves mathematical factors that provide insights into educational effectiveness. Logical factors. Logical factors relate to reasoning and critical thinking. They focus on how conclusions are drawn based on evidence and rational thought. For example, a student using logical reasoning to solve a problem in math class illustrates the application of logical factors in decision-making. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Semiotic factors. Semiotic factors relate to signs and symbols and how they create meaning. They study how we understand and interpret different forms of communication, whether through language, images, or gestures. For example, a traffic light uses colors as semiotic factors to convey messages about stopping or going. Linguistic factors. Linguistic factors are elements that involve language and its use in communication. They include vocabulary, grammar, and the way words are structured to convey meaning. For instance, the choice of words in a persuasive speech is influenced by linguistic factors that aim to connect with the audience. Communication factors. Communication factors refer to the various elements that affect how messages are sent and received. These can include the medium, the context, and the relationship between the people involved. For example, effective communication in a classroom depends on both the teacher's clarity and the student's engagement. Interaction factors. Interaction factors focus on how people engage with one another and how these interactions shape experiences. They consider the dynamics of conversations and relationships. For instance, group discussions in a classroom highlight interaction factors that can enhance learning through collaboration. Influence factors. Influence factors are elements that affect people's thoughts, behaviors, or decisions. They can come from social, cultural, or environmental sources. For example, peer pressure in a school setting is an influence factor that can impact students' choices regarding their studies and activities. Control factors. Control factors are aspects that help manage or regulate a situation or system. They involve setting rules or guidelines to ensure everything runs smoothly. For instance, classroom rules established by a teacher are control factors that help maintain order and create a conducive learning environment. Adaptive factors. Adaptive factors are elements that allow individuals or systems to adjust and respond to changes in their environment. They involve flexibility and the ability to learn from experiences. For example, a student developing new study habits after struggling with a subject demonstrates adaptive factors in action. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Regulatory factors. Regulatory factors are rules, laws, or guidelines that govern behavior within a system. They help ensure that actions are conducted in a certain way to maintain order and safety. For example, school policies regarding attendance and behavior are regulatory factors that shape students' actions. Organizational factors. Organizational factors relate to how a group or system is structured and managed. They involve the relationships, roles, and processes within an organization that affect how it operates. For instance, the hierarchy in a school, including teachers, administrators, and support staff, is an organizational factor that influences how decisions are made. Integrative factors. Integrative factors are elements that help bring different parts of a system together to work as a cohesive whole. They promote collaboration and coordination among various components. For example, teamwork in group projects at school serves as an integrative factor that enhances learning and problem solving. Differentiation factors. Differentiation factors are elements that distinguish one part of a system from another. They highlight the unique characteristics or roles within a larger context. For example, different subjects in a school, such as math, science, and art, represent differentiation factors that cater to various interests and skills. Specialization factors. Specialization factors refer to the focus on specific tasks or areas of expertise within a system. They enable individuals or groups to develop deep knowledge and skills in a particular field. For instance, teachers specializing in different subjects are specialization factors that enhance educational quality. Generalization factors. Generalization factors involve applying knowledge or skills across different areas or contexts. They emphasize the ability to transfer learning from one situation to another. For example, a student who applies problem-solving skills learned in math to a science experiment is demonstrating generalization factors in action. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Abstraction factors. Abstraction factors involve simplifying complex ideas by focusing on general concepts rather than specific details. They help in understanding broader principles without getting bogged down by the particulars. For example, when discussing freedom, one might focus on its general meaning rather than the specific laws that define it. Concretion factors. Concretion factors are the opposite of abstraction factors. They involve making ideas more specific and tangible by providing concrete examples or details. For instance, instead of just talking about animals, using specific examples like dogs and cats makes the concept more concrete. Conceptualization factors. Conceptualization factors refer to the process of forming clear ideas or concepts based on information and experiences. They help organize thoughts and provide a framework for understanding complex subjects. For example, creating a mind map to organize ideas about a research topic involves conceptualization factors. Operationalization factors. Operationalization factors involve defining how abstract concepts can be measured or assessed in practical terms. They provide specific procedures or criteria to evaluate a concept. For instance, defining student engagement by measuring attendance, participation, and feedback is an example of operationalization factors in action. Quantification factors. Quantification factors relate to the process of measuring or expressing something in numerical terms. They help provide objective data that can be analyzed. For example, counting the number of students who passed an exam is an instance of quantification factors used to evaluate performance. Qualification factors. Qualification factors are criteria or standards used to assess the quality or suitability of something. They help determine whether something meets specific requirements. For example, the qualifications needed for a job, such as education and experience, are qualification factors that help employers select candidates. Categorization factors. Categorization factors involve grouping items or concepts based on shared characteristics or attributes. They help organize information and make it easier to understand. For instance, sorting books into categories like fiction, nonfiction, and reference is an example of categorization factors that simplify access to information. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Classification factors. Classification factors are criteria used to organize or sort items, ideas, or information into groups based on shared characteristics. For example, classifying animals into categories like mammals, reptiles, and birds is a way of using classification factors to understand their differences. Typological factors. Typological factors involve grouping things based on specific types or categories, often emphasizing the characteristics that define each type. For instance, in psychology, different personality types can be considered typological factors that help in understanding human behavior. Taxonomic factors. Taxonomic factors are related to the scientific classification of living organisms. They focus on organizing species into a structured system based on their similarities and differences, such as domains, kingdoms, phyla, and species. For example, classifying humans as part of the species Homo sapiens is a taxonomic factor. Hierarchical factors. Hierarchical factors involve organizing elements in a ranked order, where each level represents a different rank or status. This structure can show relationships of authority or importance. For example, a company's organizational chart, which shows the hierarchy from CEO down to entry-level employees, illustrates hierarchical factors. Structural factors. Structural factors refer to the arrangement or organization of parts within a system. They focus on how different components are connected and how they work together. For example, the way a school is structured, including its departments and administration, is a structural factor that affects how it operates. Process factors. Process factors involve the steps or stages involved in completing a task or achieving an outcome. They focus on the methods and procedures used to carry out activities. For instance, the steps a student takes to prepare for an exam, such as studying, reviewing notes, and taking practice tests, are process factors that contribute to their success. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors. Result factors. Result factors are the outcomes or end products of a process or action. They show what happens after certain activities have been carried out. For example, the grades a student receives after completing their exams are result factors that indicate their academic performance. Product factors. Product factors refer to the characteristics and qualities of a specific product or outcome. They can include features, benefits, and overall value. For instance, the durability, design, and price of smartphone are product factors that affect consumer choices. Effectiveness factors. Effectiveness factors measure how well something achieves its intended goals or objectives. They focus on the success of an action or program in producing desired results. For example, A tutoring program that significantly improves students' grades demonstrates effectiveness factors in educational interventions. Efficiency factors. Efficiency factors assess how well resources are used to achieve a result. They focus on maximizing output while minimizing waste. For instance, a student who studies effectively in a short amount of time demonstrates efficiency factors in their study habits. Impact factors. Impact factors refer to the significant effects or influences that an action, event, or policy has on a situation or group. They measure the broader consequences of decisions. For example, a new law aimed at reducing pollution can have positive impact factors on public health and the environment. Consequence factors. Consequence factors are the results or outcomes that follow from specific actions or decisions. They highlight what happens as a direct result of something that was done. For example, the consequences of not studying for an exam may include poor grades and increased stress. Effect factors. Effect factors are similar to result factors, but they specifically focus on how one thing influences or produces a change in another. For instance, the effect factors of regular exercise can include improved physical health, better mood, and increased energy levels. Here is a simple explanation of each of these factors to help with your CPC preparation. Cause factors. Cause factors are the direct reasons or events that bring something into existence. They explain the why behind an event by looking at the forces that triggered it. For example, a lack of sleep is a cause factor for feeling tired the next day. Motive factors. Motive factors are the internal drives, needs, or desires that push a person to behave in a certain way. They explain the psychological push behind an action. For instance, a student's desire to get into a top university is a motive factor for their hard work. Reason factors. Reason factors are the logical explanations or justifications used to explain a decision or belief. Unlike causes, which are often automatic, reasons involve a conscious thought process. For example, a student might choose a specific major because they have a logical reason factor, such as high job security in that field. Purpose factors. Purpose factors relate to the goals or intended outcomes of an action. They focus on what a person hopes to achieve in the future. For example, the purpose factor behind attending a study group is to better understand complex topics before an exam. Meaning factors. Meaning factors refer to the personal significance or value that an individual attaches to an event, object, or experience. They help explain how people interpret their world. For instance, a graduation ceremony has different meaning factors for each student, such as a sense of pride, relief, or new beginnings. Sense factors. Sense factors involve the way we perceive and make sense of the information around us. They relate to how we interpret our environment through our experiences and mental frameworks. For example, someone might make sense of a difficult exam by viewing it as an opportunity to learn rather than as a threat, which is a way of using sense factors to process the situation. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Experience factors. Experience factors refer to the skills and knowledge gained through personal involvement in events or activities. They shape how a person reacts to situations based on what they have encountered in the past. For example, a student who has worked part-time in a lab will have experience factors that help them understand practical applications of their science lessons. Knowledge factors. Knowledge factors are the information, facts, and skills that a person has acquired through education and learning. This includes what someone knows about a subject. For instance, a student who reads extensively about history has knowledge factors that contribute to their understanding of historical events. Understanding factors. Understanding factors involve the ability to comprehend and make sense of information or concepts. They reflect how well a person grasps the meaning behind what they have learned or experienced. For example, a student who can explain a complex math problem in simple terms demonstrates good understanding factors. Wisdom factors. Wisdom factors are the insights and judgments developed over time from experiences, knowledge, and understanding. They help a person make sound decisions and provide guidance in life. For instance, an older student who advises their peers on managing stress during exams shows wisdom factors based on their experiences. Insight factors. Insight factors are the deep realizations or understandings that come from careful thought or reflection. They allow individuals to see things in a new light or discover solutions that were not initially obvious. For example, a student who suddenly understands a difficult concept after reflecting on it demonstrates insight factors. Revelation factors. Revelation factors refer to moments of discovering or realizing something significant that changes one's perspective or understanding. These could be unexpected insights that lead to a new way of thinking. For instance, a student who learns about a historical event that challenges their previous beliefs experiences revelation factors that can alter their worldview. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to assist you in your CPC exam preparation. Illumination factors. Illumination factors refer to the moments of clarity or understanding that help someone see things more clearly. These are the aha moments when a concept suddenly makes sense or when new ideas come to light. For example, when studying a difficult topic, a student might have an illumination factor when they finally connect the dots between different concepts. Discovery factors. Discovery factors involve finding or learning something new that was previously unknown. This can happen through exploration, research, or observation. For instance, a scientist discovering a new species of plant represents a discovery factor that adds to our understanding of biodiversity. Invention factors. Invention factors are the processes or elements involved in creating something entirely new that did not exist before. This usually involves combining existing ideas or materials in a novel way. For example, Thomas Edison's invention of the light bulb is an example of invention factors leading to a groundbreaking development in technology. Innovation factors. Innovation factors refer to improvements or enhancements made to existing products, processes, or ideas. It involves taking something that already exists and making it better or more efficient. For example, smartphone companies continuously innovate by adding new features to their devices, such as better cameras or longer battery life. Creativity factors. Creativity factors are the qualities and processes that enable a person to generate unique ideas or solutions. This involves thinking outside the box and approaching problems in novel ways. For instance, a student brainstorming multiple approaches to a project demonstrates creativity factors in action. Imagination factors. Imagination factors refer to the ability to form new images and ideas in the mind, often involving fantasy or concepts that do not yet exist. It allows individuals to visualize possibilities and think about things that are not currently real. For example, writing a fictional story requires strong imagination factors to create characters and worlds that captivate readers. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Fantasy factors. Fantasy factors refer to ideas or concepts that are imaginative and often unrealistic. They involve creating scenarios that are not bound by the rules of reality, like magical worlds or mythical creatures. For example, a story about wizards and dragons is driven by fantasy factors that allow for limitless creativity. Dream factors. Dream factors relate to the thoughts, images, and emotions that occur during sleep or aspirations one has for the future. Dreams can reflect desires, fears, or experiences and can be both literal and metaphorical. For instance, a student dreaming of becoming a doctor is expressing dream factors related to their career aspirations. Illusion factors. Illusion factors involve perceptions that do not match reality. They can create misleading impressions or false beliefs about something. For example, a magic trick that makes it seem like an object has vanished is based on illusion factors that deceive the viewer's senses. Reality factors. Reality factors refer to the actual state of affairs and the truth of situations as they exist in the real world. These factors are grounded in facts and objective observations. For example, studying scientific data about climate change focuses on reality factors that help us understand environmental issues. Perception factors. Perception factors relate to how we interpret and make sense of the information we receive from our senses. They influence how we view the world and can vary from person to person. For instance, Two people can witness the same event, but perceive it differently based on their backgrounds and experiences. Attention factors. Attention factors involve the ability to focus on specific stimuli or information while ignoring distractions. They are crucial for learning and processing information effectively. For example, a student concentrating on a lecture while ignoring background noise demonstrates attention factors that enhance their understanding. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Memory factors. Memory factors refer to the processes involved in storing, retaining, and recalling information. They affect how we learn and remember things. For example, techniques like repetition or visualization can enhance memory factors, helping a student remember facts for an exam. Learning factors. Learning factors involve the various elements that influence how people acquire knowledge or skills. These can include the methods used, the environment, and individual differences such as prior knowledge or learning styles. For instance, a student who learns best through hands-on activities may have learning factors that favor experiential education. Motivation factors. Motivation factors are the internal and external reasons that drive a person to take action or pursue goals. They can include personal interests, rewards, or the desire to achieve something. For example, a student motivated to study hard for a scholarship has motivation factors that push them to excel academically. Emotion factors. Emotion factors relate to the feelings and emotional responses that can influence behavior and decision-making. Emotions such as happiness, sadness, anger, or excitement can affect how we interact with the world. For instance, a student feeling anxious before a test may perform differently than when they are calm and confident. Feeling factors. Feeling factors are closely related to emotions, but refer more to the subjective experience of emotions. They encompass individual sensations and responses to situations. For example, a student might feel a sense of relief after completing a challenging assignment, which reflects their feeling factors in that context. Humor factors. Humor factors involve the elements that make something funny or entertaining. They can influence social interactions and help create a positive atmosphere. For instance, a teacher using jokes or lighthearted stories in class can enhance humor factors that make learning more enjoyable. Mood factors. Mood factors refer to the overall emotional state or disposition of a person at a given time. Moods can be stable over longer periods and influence how we perceive and react to situations. For example, a student in a good mood may be more open to participating in class discussions than when they are feeling down. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Temperament factors. Temperament factors refer to the innate traits and characteristics that influence how a person reacts to the world around them. These are often seen as the biological basis for personality and can include qualities such as being easygoing, anxious, or energetic. For example, a child who is naturally calm and adaptable has temperament factors that make them more resilient in new situations. Personality factors. Personality factors are the combination of traits, behaviors, and patterns of thinking that make up an individual's unique character. These include aspects like how someone interacts with others, their preferences, and their emotional responses. For instance, a person who is outgoing and friendly exhibits personality factors that encourage social interaction. Character factors. Character factors relate to the moral and ethical qualities of a person. They encompass values, beliefs, and principles that guide behavior and decision-making. For example, someone known for honesty and integrity demonstrates strong character factors that influence how they are perceived by others. Disposition factors. Disposition factors refer to a person's usual mood or temperament and how they tend to respond in specific situations. This can include being optimistic, pessimistic, or neutral. For instance, a person with a cheerful disposition is likely to approach challenges with a positive outlook. Tendency factors. Tendency factors are the inclinations or habits that lead a person to act in certain ways over time. They reflect patterns of behavior that are often consistent. For example, someone who tends to procrastinate has tendency factors that influence their time management skills. Propensity factors. Propensity factors are similar to tendency factors and refer to an individual's natural inclination or readiness to act in a certain way. They can be influenced by both nature and nurture. For instance, a person with a propensity for leadership may naturally take charge in group situations. Inclination factors. Inclination factors are the preferences or desires that guide a person's choices and actions. They can be seen as the pull towards certain activities or ways of thinking. For example, a student with an inclination toward the arts may choose to take more art classes and engage in creative projects. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Preference factors. Preference factors refer to the likes or dislikes that influence a person's choices. They represent what someone favors or enjoys in various situations. For example, if a student prefers studying in a quiet environment, this preference factor affects where they choose to do their homework. Choice factors. Choice factors are the different elements or criteria that influence the selection process when making a decision. These can include available options, personal values, and external influences. For instance, when choosing a college, factors like location, cost, and programs offered are all choice factors that help shape the student's decision. Decision factors. Decision factors are the key considerations that guide a person in making a specific choice or conclusion. They involve weighing the pros and cons of different options. For example, deciding whether to take a gap year after high school involves decision factors like financial readiness and personal goals. Judgment factors. Judgment factors relate to the criteria and reasoning that people use to form opinions or make evaluations about something. These factors can include personal experiences, beliefs, and information available. For example, a teacher's judgment factors may influence how they assess a student's performance based on their understanding of the material. Evaluation factors. Evaluation factors involve the criteria used to assess or measure the quality, value, or importance of something. This can include specific standards or benchmarks. For instance, when grading an essay, a teacher considers evaluation factors such as clarity, organization, and argument strength. Critique factors. Critique factors refer to the aspects considered when analyzing and providing feedback on a work or idea. This involves identifying strengths and weaknesses, as well as offering constructive comments. For example, during a peer review, critique factors might focus on the effectiveness of an argument or the clarity of writing. Analytical factors. Analytical factors involve the ability to break down complex information into smaller parts to understand it better. This often includes critical thinking and problem-solving skills. For instance, when analyzing a scientific experiment, a student uses analytical factors to examine the data and draw conclusions based on evidence. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Synthesis factors. Synthesis factors refer to the process of combining different ideas, information, or elements to create a new whole. This often involves bringing together various perspectives to form a comprehensive understanding or solution. For example, when writing a research paper, a student synthesizes information from multiple sources to present a cohesive argument. Integration factors. Integration factors involve the merging or uniting of different components to work together effectively. This can apply to ideas, systems, or practices. For instance, in a team project, integration factors help ensure that each member's contributions fit together to achieve a common goal. Differentiation factors. Differentiation factors are the characteristics or qualities that distinguish one thing from another. This can involve recognizing unique aspects that set something apart. For example, in marketing, companies use differentiation factors to highlight what makes their product unique compared to competitors. Specialization factors. Specialization factors refer to the focus on a specific area of expertise or skill. This can involve developing deep knowledge or abilities in a particular field. For instance, a student who decides to specialize in biology will concentrate their studies on that subject to gain a thorough understanding. Generalization factors. Generalization factors involve applying knowledge or concepts learned in one context to broader situations. This means taking specific experiences and using them to understand or predict similar scenarios. For example, a student who learns a math principle in one problem can generalize that knowledge to solve different types of problems. Abstraction factors. Abstraction factors refer to the process of simplifying complex ideas by focusing on the general concepts rather than specific details. This helps in understanding broader principles. For instance, when discussing justice, one might abstract the idea by focusing on fairness rather than specific legal cases. Conceptualization factors. Conceptualization factors involve forming clear ideas or concepts based on information and experiences. This helps organize thoughts and provides a framework for understanding complex subjects. For example, when studying a theory, a student uses conceptualization factors to outline its main components and how they relate to each other. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Representation factors. Representation factors refer to the ways in which ideas, objects, or concepts are depicted or illustrated. This can involve using images, words, or symbols to convey meaning. For example, a diagram in a science textbook is a representation factor that helps students visualize complex processes. Symbolization factors. Symbolization factors involve using symbols to represent ideas or concepts. This can include letters, numbers, or other signs that carry specific meanings. For instance, in mathematics, the symbol plus represents addition, and this symbolization factor helps convey mathematical operations clearly. Metaphonological factors. Metaphonological factors relate to the awareness and understanding of the sound structure of language. This includes recognizing how sounds and words can be manipulated, such as in rhymes or phonemes. For example, a student who can identify and manipulate the sounds in a word demonstrates metaphonological factors that are important for reading skills. Metacognitive factors. Metacognitive factors involve thinking about one's own thinking processes. This includes awareness of how you learn, understand, and solve problems. For example, a student who reflects on which study techniques work best for them is using metacognitive factors to improve their learning strategies. Metacommunication factors. Metacommunication factors refer to the messages conveyed about communication itself. This includes body language, tone of voice, and context that provide additional meaning beyond the words spoken. For instance, when someone says, "I'm fine," with a frown, the metacommunication factors suggest that they may not actually be fine despite the words. Meta-analytic factors. Meta-analytic factors involve the analysis of multiple studies or pieces of research to draw broader conclusions. This helps in understanding trends and patterns across different findings. For example, a researcher might conduct a meta-analysis to summarize the results of several studies on the effects of a new teaching method. Metasynthesis factors. Metasynthesis factors refer to the integration of findings from various qualitative studies to develop a comprehensive understanding of a specific topic. This process helps highlight common themes and insights across different research. For example, a metasynthesis of interviews about student experiences in online learning can provide deeper insights into the challenges and benefits faced by students. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you understand the concepts better. Meta-theoretical factors. Meta-theoretical factors refer to the underlying principles or assumptions that shape a theory. They involve examining the foundations of theories to understand how they were developed and what they imply. For example, when studying psychology, meta-theoretical factors might involve looking at the basic beliefs about human nature that inform different psychological theories. Meta-perspective factors. Meta-perspective factors involve looking at a situation from a higher or broader viewpoint. This means considering multiple angles or frameworks to gain a deeper understanding of an issue. For instance, when analyzing a social issue, meta-perspective factors might include examining it through cultural, economic, and historical lenses to see how these aspects interact. Metaparadigmatic factors. Metaparadigmatic factors refer to the overarching frameworks or worldviews that guide how we understand and study different phenomena. These are the big ideas that shape specific theories or practices within a field. For example, in science, the metaparadigmatic factors could include the shift from Newtonian physics to quantum mechanics, changing how scientists view the nature of reality. Meta-approach factors. Meta-approach factors are the strategies or methods used to analyze and evaluate various theories or practices. They involve reflecting on the best ways to approach a problem or topic. For example, in research, a meta-approach might involve deciding whether to use qualitative methods or quantitative methods based on the goals of the study. Meta-model factors. Meta-model factors refer to the models that describe the relationships between different theories or concepts. These models help clarify how various elements fit together within a particular field. For instance, in education, a meta-model might illustrate how different teaching methods relate to student learning outcomes. Metastructural factors. Metastructural factors involve the underlying structures that shape systems or frameworks within a discipline. This includes the rules, norms, and relationships that govern how elements interact. For example, in sociology, metastructural factors might examine the social institutions and how they influence individual behavior and societal dynamics. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Metaprocess factors. Metaprocess factors refer to the examination and understanding of the processes involved in a particular activity or system. This means looking at how things are done and the steps taken to achieve results. For example, in a research project, metaprocess factors would involve analyzing how data is collected, analyzed, and interpreted. Metaproduct factors. Metaproduct factors focus on the outcomes or products that result from a certain process or activity. This includes evaluating the quality, effectiveness, and significance of what has been produced. For instance, if a student creates a presentation, metaproduct factors would look at how well the presentation communicates the information and engages the audience. Meta-results factors. Meta-results factors involve the broader implications or consequences of specific outcomes from process. This means considering what the results mean in a larger context. For example, if a new teaching method improves student grades, the meta-results factors would explore how this change affects overall school performance and student motivation. Meta-impact factors. Meta-impact factors refer to the overall effects or influences that a particular action or decision has on a wider scale. This involves assessing how something impacts individuals, communities, or systems. For instance, implementing a new environmental policy can have meta-impact factors that include changes in public health and local economies. Meta-consequence factors. Meta-consequence factors focus on the results that follow from specific actions or decisions. This means looking at the direct and indirect outcomes that arise. For example, if a company decides to cut costs by reducing staff, the meta-consequence factors would include not only the financial savings, but also the effects on employee morale and company culture. Meta-effect factors. Meta-effect factors refer to the broader effects that result from a specific cause or action. This includes understanding how a change can ripple through different areas. For example, if a new law is passed to reduce pollution, the meta-effect factors would examine how this law impacts public health, local economies, and environmental quality. Meta-cause factors. Meta-cause factors involve analyzing the underlying causes that lead to specific outcomes or events. This means looking beyond the immediate reasons to understand the deeper influences at play. For instance, if a school experiences high dropout rates, the meta-cause factors would explore systemic issues like socioeconomic conditions and access to resources. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Metamotive factors. Metamotive factors refer to the deeper motivations or drives behind a person's actions or decisions. This involves understanding why someone does something at a fundamental level beyond just surface-level reasons. For example, a student might study hard not just to get good grades, but also to achieve their long-term goal of becoming a doctor. Meta-reason factors. Meta-reason factors involve the underlying reasoning and thought processes that guide decision-making. This means examining the logic and justification behind a choice or belief. For instance, when someone decides to join a club, the meta-reason factors might include personal interests, social benefits, and opportunities for skill development. Meta-purpose factors. Meta-purpose factors refer to the broader goals or intentions behind actions, considering what someone ultimately hopes to achieve. This involves looking at the bigger picture and understanding the significance of tasks. For example, a teacher's meta-purpose in assigning projects may be to foster critical thinking skills and prepare students for real-world challenges. Meta-objective factors. Meta-objective factors are the overarching objectives or aims that guide a person's actions or plans. These represent the specific outcomes that someone is striving for, often related to long-term goals. For instance, a student's meta-objective might be to gain admission to a competitive university, which informs their choices about coursework and extracurricular activities. Meta-meta factors. Meta-meta factors can be understood as reflecting on the higher-level concepts or frameworks that shape thinking about thinking. This involves analyzing the ways in which we think about our thoughts, decisions, and processes. For example, a researcher might consider how their biases influence their conclusions in a study, which is a form of meta-meta-analysis. Meta-reference factors. Meta-reference factors involve the context or standards used to assess or interpret information, actions, or decisions. This means looking at how different frameworks or references influence understanding. For example, when evaluating a piece of literature, the meta-reference factors could include the historical context, literary theories, and the author's background, which help shape the interpretation of the text. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Metalinguistic factors. Metalinguistic factors refer to the awareness and understanding of language itself. This includes recognizing how language works, its rules, and how it can be used to communicate effectively. For example, when someone analyzes the use of metaphors or grammar in a poem, they are engaging with metalinguistic factors. Metacommunication factors. Metacommunication factors involve the messages that are communicated about communication itself. This includes body language, tone of voice, and context that provide additional meaning beyond the words spoken. For instance, if someone says, "I'm fine," with a sarcastic tone, the metacommunication factors suggest that they might not actually be fine. Metacognitive factors. Metacognitive factors refer to the awareness and regulation of one's own thinking and learning processes. This includes knowing how you learn best and being able to evaluate and adjust your study strategies. For example, a student who reflects on their test performance to figure out what study methods worked or didn't work is using metacognitive factors. Metaemotion factors. Metaemotion factors involve the awareness and understanding of one's own emotions and the emotions of others. This includes recognizing how emotions influence thoughts and behaviors. For example, someone who feels anxious before a presentation might reflect on that anxiety and how it affects their confidence, demonstrating metaemotion factors. Metamotivational factors. Metamotivational factors refer to the deeper motivations that drive a person's actions and goals. This involves understanding not just what motivates you, but also why those motivations exist. For example, a student might be motivated to volunteer because they want to help others, but also because they feel a personal sense of fulfillment. Metapersonal factors. Metapersonal factors involve the self-awareness and understanding of one's own identity and personal experiences. This includes reflecting on how past experiences shape who you are today. For instance, a person might consider how their upbringing influences their values and decisions, which are metapersonal factors at play. Meta-identity factors. Meta-identity factors refer to the understanding of how identity is formed and expressed. This means considering how various aspects of a person's identity, such as culture, gender, and experiences, come together to shape who they are. For example, a student exploring their cultural background and how it affects their worldview is engaging with meta-identity factors. Meta-development factors. Meta-development factors involve the processes and influences that contribute to personal growth and development over time. This includes reflecting on how experiences, education, and relationships shape who you become. For instance, someone who actively seeks feedback to improve their skills is engaged in meta-development factors as they work on their personal growth. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Meta-learning factors. Meta-learning factors refer to the understanding and awareness of how learning happens. This includes knowing your own learning styles, strategies, and what techniques work best for you. For example, if a student realizes they learn better by doing hands-on activities rather than just reading, they are applying meta-learning factors to improve their studies. Meta-research factors. Meta-research factors involve analyzing how research is conducted and the methods used in studies. This means critically evaluating the validity, reliability, and overall quality of research findings. For instance, when looking at multiple studies on a topic to see if their conclusions agree, a researcher is engaging with meta-research factors. Meta-technology factors. Meta-technology factors refer to the understanding of how technology impacts various fields and practices. This includes recognizing both the benefits and challenges of using technology in different contexts. For example, a student using online resources for research needs to consider both the advantages of easy access to information and the potential for misinformation, demonstrating meta-technology factors. Meta-intervention factors. Meta-intervention factors involve the strategies and methods used to create change or improvement in a certain situation or context. This includes evaluating the effectiveness of interventions in areas like education, health, or social services. For example, when assessing a new teaching method to see if it improves student engagement, educators are considering meta-intervention factors. Meta-evaluation factors. Meta-evaluation factors refer to the process of assessing the effectiveness and quality of evaluation methods themselves. This means looking at how well evaluations are conducted and whether they provide useful information. For instance, when a school reviews its own assessment tools to ensure they accurately measure student learning, they are engaging in meta-evaluation factors. Meta-management factors. Meta-management factors involve understanding the principles and practices of effective management. This includes reflecting on leadership styles, decision-making processes, and organizational strategies. For example, a manager who considers how different leadership approaches impact team performance is applying meta-management factors to improve their leadership skills. Meta-liderazgo factors. Meta-liderazgo factors focus on the understanding of leadership and the qualities that make someone an effective leader. This includes examining personal leadership styles, influences, and the impact of leadership on groups or organizations. For instance, a student studying different leadership theories to improve their own skills is engaging with meta-liderazgo factors. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Meta-organization factors. Meta-organization factors refer to the higher-level principles and structures that guide how organizations function and operate. This includes the ways in which different parts of an organization work together and how they are structured to achieve goals. For example, a company's approach to teamwork and communication is influenced by its meta-organization factors. Metasystems factors. Metasystems factors involve the understanding of larger systems that encompass various components and how they interact with each other. This means looking at the relationships and dynamics between different systems or subsystems. For instance, in environmental science, metasystems factors might explore how ecosystems interact with human activities and climate change. Meta-networks factors. Meta-networks factors focus on the connections and relationships between different networks or groups. This includes understanding how information and resources flow between these networks and the impact of these connections. For example, social media platforms create meta-networks factors by connecting individuals and organizations across different fields. Meta-environment factors. Meta-environment factors refer to the broader environmental influences that affect a person, organization, or system. This includes social, economic, political, and cultural factors that shape how things operate. For example, a business must consider meta-environment factors like market trends and regulations when planning its strategies. Meta-context factors. Meta-context factors involve the specific circumstances and background that influence a situation or event. This means understanding the context in which something occurs, including historical and cultural elements. For instance, when analyzing a piece of literature, meta-context factors might include the time period and societal norms that influence the author. Meta-framework factors. Meta-framework factors refer to the overarching structures or models that guide thinking and analysis in various fields. This includes the theoretical frameworks that shape how we understand and approach issues. For example, in psychology, different theoretical models serve as meta-framework factors that influence research and practice. Meta-discourse factors. Meta-discourse factors involve the ways in which communication is structured and the cues that help readers or listeners understand the flow of information. This includes elements like transitions, signposts, and comments that guide the audience through a text or conversation. For instance, a speaker using phrases like "firstly" or "in conclusion" employs meta-discourse factors to clarify their message. Meta-narrative factors. Meta-narrative factors refer to the overarching stories or explanations that shape our understanding of events, cultures, or ideologies. This includes the big ideas and narratives that influence how we interpret information. For example, the way history is taught often reflects meta-narrative factors that highlight certain perspectives while downplaying others. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Meta-perspective factors. Meta-perspective factors refer to the ability to look at a situation or issue from different viewpoints. This means considering various angles, opinions, or frameworks to gain a broader understanding. For example, when discussing a controversial topic, considering the perspectives of different stakeholders involves meta-perspective factors. Meta-paradigm factors. Meta-paradigm factors involve the fundamental beliefs and theories that shape a particular field of study. These are the overarching ideas that guide research and practice within a discipline. For instance, in nursing, the meta-paradigm factors might include concepts like health, environment, person, and nursing, which define how practitioners approach care. Meta-approach factors. Meta-approach factors refer to the strategies or methods used to analyze or address a problem. This involves reflecting on the best ways to approach a situation or topic. For example, in a science project, a student might choose a qualitative approach versus a quantitative approach based on the nature of their research question, demonstrating meta-approach factors. Meta-model factors. Meta-model factors involve the frameworks or models that explain how different theories or concepts relate to each other. These models help clarify relationships and provide a structure for understanding complex ideas. For example, in psychology, a meta-model might illustrate how different psychological theories connect to explain human behavior. Metastructure factors. Metastructure factors refer to the underlying organization or framework that shapes a system or process. This includes the rules, norms, and relationships that govern how things function. For instance, in an organization, metastructure factors might include the hierarchy, communication channels, and policies that determine how decisions are made. Metaprocess factors. Metaprocess factors involve analyzing the processes involved in a specific activity or system. This means looking at how things work and the steps taken to achieve results. For example, when evaluating a team's project workflow, a manager might assess metaprocess factors to identify areas for improvement in efficiency. Metaproduct factors. Metaproduct factors focus on the outcomes or products that result from a certain process. This includes evaluating the quality and effectiveness of what has been produced. For example, after completing a group presentation, the team might reflect on metaproduct factors to determine how well they communicated their message and engaged the audience. Here's a simple explanation of each of these factors to help you prepare for the CPC exam. Meta-results factors. Meta-results factors refer to the broader outcomes or effects that arise from a specific action or process. This involves looking at the overall results and what they mean in a larger context. For example, if a new teaching method improves student engagement, the meta-results factors would explore how that change affects overall student learning and school performance. Meta-impact factors. Meta-impact factors focus on the wider effects or influences that a particular action or decision has on different areas. This means assessing how something impacts individuals, communities, or systems. For instance, if a city implements a new public transportation system, the meta-impact factors would consider how it affects traffic, the environment, and residents' daily lives. Meta-consequence factors. Meta-consequence factors involve the specific outcomes that follow from actions or decisions. This means looking at both direct and indirect consequences of a particular choice. For example, If a company decides to cut costs by reducing staff, the meta-consequence factors would include the immediate financial savings and the longer-term effects on employee morale and productivity. Meta-effect factors. Meta-effect factors refer to the overall effects that result from a specific cause or action. This includes understanding how a change can ripple through different areas. For example, if a new law is passed to reduce pollution, the meta-effect factors would examine how this law impacts public health, local economies, and environmental quality. Meta-cause factors. Meta-cause factors involve analyzing the deeper reasons or causes that lead to specific outcomes or events. This means looking beyond the immediate causes to understand the underlying influences at play. For instance, if a school experiences high dropout rates, the meta-cause factors would explore systemic issues like socioeconomic conditions and access to educational resources. Meta-motive factors. Meta-motive factors refer to the deeper motivations behind a person's actions or decisions. This involves understanding why someone does something at a fundamental level. For example, a student might study hard not just to get good grades, but also to achieve their long-term goal of pursuing a specific career. Meta-reason factors. Meta-reason factors involve the underlying reasoning and thought processes that guide decision-making. This means examining the logic and justification behind a choice or belief. For example, when someone decides to join a club, the meta-reason factors might include personal interests, social benefits, and opportunities for skill development. Meta-purpose factors. Meta-purpose factors refer to the broader goals or intentions behind actions, considering what someone ultimately hopes to achieve. This involves looking at the bigger picture and understanding the significance of a task. For example, a teacher's meta-purpose in assigning projects may be to foster critical thinking skills and prepare students for real-world challenges. Meta-objective factors. Meta-objective factors are the overarching objectives or aims that guide a person's actions or plans. These represent the specific outcomes that someone is striving for, often related to long-term goals. For instance, a student's meta-objective might be to gain admission to a competitive university, which informs their choices about coursework and extracurricular activities.